I'm letting them.
Good evening and welcome to this talk being brought to you by the Khaki Heritage Foundation. This might be a good time to review some housekeeping announcements. Please keep your microphones on mute and your videos turned off so that the speakers are not disturbed. Kindly do not annotate the screen of your device. That can be a source of disruption to the speaker as well as the audience. In case you get logged out, use the same link to join back. The chat box could be used for questions which you may have of the speaker. Do key them in, and time permitting, we will take these questions to the speakers at the end of their talk. Do check the audio on your device that it's on. And also it might be a good idea to use earphones or headphones for better clarity. So let's sit back and wait for everybody to join us. We'll start off at 6 o'clock. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this talk being brought to you by the Khaki Heritage Foundation. A few housekeeping announcements are there on the screen. Let's keep our videos off and our microphones turned off while the speakers are speaking so that it doesn't disturb them. Do not annotate the screen of your device. In case you get logged out, use the same link to join back. The chat box needs to be used for any questions you may have of the speaker. Do use it for that purpose. Check the sound of your device is on, and it might be a good idea to use earphones or headphones for better clarity. The topic for today is Cartographica Indica, and Sangeeta and Ratnesh Mathur are going to talk to us about how India is represented in maps. But more about Sangeeta and Mathur in a bit after I tell you a little bit about Khaki, which really stands for keeping heritage alive and kicking in India. Our raison d'etre being heritage evangelism, which is generating awareness about the city's tangible and intangible heritage amongst its residents and visitors. The mission being to create a platform to ensure that conservation is economically viable. And our approach to history is an honest, knowledgeable, fun, yet expert and reliable approach. Two entities to Khaki. The foundation is that which is bringing you this talk, also has a library, a publication cell, and a conservation cell. And we don't lose any opportunity to advocate heritage conservation amongst the powers that be. Khaki Tours is that entity which brings you walks, specially curated as well as scheduled ones, jeep rides, cruises, and tours. You'll get a little flavor of that at the end of this introduction. So three objectives really of both the entities: awareness about heritage, its conservation, and its effective archiving. A glimpse of the conservation initiative that Khaki was involved in. Conservation of this particular milestone with the help of the residents of that locality and the BMC. The person you see sitting next to the milestone is Bharat Gothoskar, the founder, and the lady in blue is Tapan, our conservation architect at that time. If you'd like to walk through the fort at your own pace with the help of a book, and you can do one particular precinct, one particular street, one particular building at your convenience with the help of maps and suggested routes, this is the book for you. It's available at many bookstores, but if you'd like a copy delivered to you, please write into the email address at the bottom of the screen. Also write into the email address at the bottom of the screen if you'd like a copy of our newsletter, which is really all about getting kids interested in heritage from a very young age. So easily digestible facts about heritage, about Bombay, about its culture, every month, month on month. This is where it all started, but we had to shut it because of the pandemic. Hopefully, we are looking forward to a workshop happening live very soon, and we'll be able to welcome you actually to our physical space, which can seat up to 40 people in different configurations. You can help us by providing your expertise in case you have expert knowledge about any topic. You're welcome to approach us to be a speaker. You can volunteer to connect us to speakers, and very importantly, you can connect us to people who are philanthropically inclined towards heritage to help us raise funds, because as you can well imagine, the activities of Khaki Tours, which funds the foundation, have been virtually non-existent. It's only just that we're starting to open up. And despite this, we've been given this 2021 Traveler's Choice Award, the only walking tour company in Mumbai to get this award. Here's a flavor of what is in store all the way till November 20th. We have a calendar planned till the second week of December, after which we take a break for 3 weeks and come back, hopefully in a different avatar, early January. So you can see the varied topics we have. We've got India through objects and India through languages. We've got the Indian travails, as he called them, of a traveler who walked from England to India. Nandini is going to talk about India's first woman doctor. And there's an expose on the Khojas in Bombay. Should you like to be able to decipher, at least start deciphering the Brahmi script on our various monuments, this is the workshop for you to be at, October 10th and 17th, 11 a.m. And this is our first live workshop on introduction to Madhubani paintings. Also tomorrow, October 10th, registrations are still open. So if you'd like to join, do write in. Lal Bagh Stroll, the Heritage Walk, we are opening up tomorrow at 8 a.m. A very popular and quite a signature walk of ours. And a group tour of the fort also tomorrow in the evening. Okay, now coming to Sangeeta and Ratnesh Mathur. They're going to talk to us about maps. They're going to talk to us about how Europeans drew up the maps of India, including Copernicus, Columbus. They're going to talk to us about how Indians saw India through maps. And they're going to present a view of India through cartography, both from the Western eye as well as Indian eyes. Sangeeta and Ratnesh are no strangers to khaki. They've spoken to us before. They are a Delhi-based couple who are collectors of books and prints of India. And their dream is to eventually curate all the collections of the various towns of India into a museum. Their book, Picturesque India, on picture postcards from India was published a few years ago. So welcome, Sangeeta and Ratnesh. Thank you for accepting our invitation at such short notice when one of our scheduled speakers wanted a change of date. So thank you very much for that, and welcome to Khaki.
Thank you, Farooq.
Thank you. Are we ready to go? Should we start on?
Yes, please.
All right, we'll just share the screen. All right. Okay. So yeah, we have quite a bit of slides, lots of pictures as like the last time. You can see that we've extended the story in terms of the classics cartography and also the Indian concept. We'll try and introduce the Mandir Mandala concept. The mandala and the mandir are the Indian viewpoint on maps. We will try and connect that towards the end. So 3 parts. We'll just the topic is very vast, as you know, and we have a very vast collection. We probably have over 1,100 antiquarian maps with us, from 1465, the oldest paper that we have, to 1947. We have a fairly vast collection, and the maps. Frankly, the paper, the size. There's no way that the digital can capture that piece. Eventually, the charts. You can't get the context of the size. Some of the small ones look very nice in a digital story, but the large maps, and a lot of them the old maps are very large. They require space, and frankly, we could do 45 minutes to 1 hour of exploration, or even several days of exploration on one map. They've not yet been explored from the India point of view. So there's a lot that one can do with this. Now, given the context, we start with what is a map. We try and define the boundaries of this presentation, and then the meat of the presentation is basically the story of India and maps and atlases. We will connect the cartography to the geographical knowledge of India at a point in time, and then give you a few examples of the important maps. We then move on to what is a map towards the end. We come back to this question in the modern context when we have Google Maps and the digital maps. What is the relevance, right? So we come back to connect to this, try and answer this abstract question, because the map today is used in various ways. So what is a map? Now, there are 5 types, and it's important that as we show you examples, it's important to understand this bit. So topographical maps is what we used to call the physical features of an area. Right? The allegorical maps, by definition, are the visual representation of a place. Then the cosmological maps relating to the universe. Well, all maps, as you will see till around the year 1750, did have a cosmological connection. So, and then of course, what is antiquarian? So vintage paper, in our context, we are looking at, when we say antiquarian, we look at, in the Indian context, anything which is pre-1947, that becomes the benchmark. And of course, printing history limits this. So printing, which starts from around 1400 CE till 1947, right? Prior to that, of course, there is a great deal of handmade maps, and those typically are called manuscript maps. Yeah. And then historical maps. So what's the distinction between antiquarian and historical? Basically, it's a visual representation of history. So we will try and delink these two things, because there's a great deal of confusion between these two words, antiquarian maps and historical maps, in the Indian context. And then what are the conventionally, what do maps, what are the different types of maps? We have city maps, a big focus for us, war maps, naval charts, celestial maps, survey maps, and topographical views, including panoramic views. So in the early printing years till the year 1840, there is a great deal of confusion between, is this a panoramic view printed through lithography or pre-lithography, or is this does this come under the classification of a map? And and then political maps and concept maps. Now, concept maps by itself tells you that the word has now been extended from the old definition. So we will try and also show you examples, and as Sangeeta takes you through some of the examples, we will give you some examples, of course, largely of print, manuscript, as I mentioned, then cloth bagged. So there are cloth bagged maps, and then there are cloth maps on which we have done embroidery or painted or stitched. Then there are stone and metal maps and digital maps. I think that's something which we will touch again. So so today when we look at geographic knowledge of India, when in the era of the internet, everything is just a click away, right? So from a geography standpoint, the geographical knowledge was always historically classified as, is this mathematical geography or descriptive geography? And mathematical geography is actually a combination of astronomy, geometry, and cartography. Descriptive geography is the regional, physical, political, and historical component. So this distinction should be clear, right? So today, of course, on your GPS on the phone, you have all the geographical knowledge, and we've had that experience where we've actually sat with a friend who in the small aircraft, a 3-seater, where he actually used the same to pick up. He used his GPS to pick us up from home, and used the same mobile phone to fly the plane too. So one continuous spin, which was a very interesting piece, and that's how far we've come. Now let's get to what was before the internet era, just a reminder. And then we look at what are the sources of geographical knowledge outside India. Now, when we look at sources of geographical knowledge outside India, we are looking at sources which are outside India, which are Greek. Then we go to outside India, Middle East, China, and Southeast Asia. And then we come to what are the India sources. So let's quickly run through this piece. A little bit of, don't want to bore you with too much geography, but I think the geographical context is important. So if you see the Homer's piece, which is not dated, there is no mention of India and Indica in either the Iliad or the Odyssey, right? There is also no mention of the word Asia nor Europe. What is mentioned there is the 4 directions of winds. So, the winds from the southeast, from the northeast, that's the direction. And that does impact cartography quite a bit. So this clearly Homer, wind directions is the input into geography. Then if we see tales of Miletus, basically the geometrical ideas, visits Nile, but there is no India. The next one, which is 610 BC. So around the year 600 BC, and remember this is all pre-Alexander. And Anaximander is the one who contributes something called the TO world map. We'll come to this bit. We'll show you an example of the TO world map. So in European cartography, the oldest map is the TO. We'll basically, he does come to the point where he describes Asia, Europe, and Africa, right? And then, then the next one, which is, let's see. The first mention, Herodotus, of course, he describes India, Indica, 480 BC. And he doesn't describe too much of India. He does mention the word Indus River for the first time. The first reference to Indus as a river and the word Indica is by Herodotus. But he doesn't have any further information about the land of India and the people of India. Plato and Aristotle, of course, the teacher of Alexander, he propagates the go and see. And, that's how Alexander's, his expeditions should also be seen as not just military, but a geographical one. So he does, he brings a number of, cartographers and geographers along with him. And Indus, Punjab, and the land of 5 rivers is mapped for the first time. What is important to see is that he actually went to where the Indus goes into the ocean. This was part of his geographical mission. And he had very clearly defined 2 more pending expeditions after the Indus one, which is to see where does the Caspian Sea flow to, if it flows into an ocean, and the Nile River, does it end up in the ocean? These are 2 things that he could not do. Okay, so that was what was the original promise between Aristotle and Alexander. And then, of course, Megasthenes, which is post-Alexander. Of course, he extensively describes the Ganga, and his book Indica, unfortunately, the whole thing is not available. Only pieces of it are quoted. Describes monsoon, people. So this, and then there is a whole flurry of books in Greek with the title Indica and a lot of focus, which is the post-Chandragupta Maurya period, and when the Greek flow of information on India flows very fast to Greece. So now post-Alexander, I think many of these, but Posidonius is important to understand. Alexander had made a famous library at Alexandria, the city that he created at the junction of what he thought was Africa, Asia, and Europe. The three parts of the world met at Alexandria, which is the city with the same name in Egypt today. And he created a library and the first museum of the world over there, right? All the knowledge of the world. And then if you see the librarians there, they've contributed significantly to mapping. Right, so this was very clearly a focus, the knowledge aggregated at that point. And so if you see Posidonius, he actually miscalculated famously the Earth's circumference. And that is used by Columbus to sail around the Earth, supposedly to India. Right, so that famous error lasts all the way to Columbus's time. And even Ptolemy, he accepted Posidonius's wrong Earth circumference, right? So that's Ptolemy is very, very, we'll show you, because Ptolemy and his work has lasted for the next 2,000 years. We are still collecting Ptolemy's maps, right? So none of his atlases from 1st century AD actually have lasted. It is nothing which is handmade, any paper survives, but his descriptions survive entirely. So it's all geographic descriptions. And then there is an anonymous Greek book from 1st century AD, which is Periplus. The Periplus is basically a logbook. Sorry, there's an error there. But basically, it's a ship logbook, and 66 sections of it describe various ports of India. So this is an extremely important piece of record on Indian geography, right? We'll skip, Roman Pliny the Elder, and of course, post-Greek, there is. Now let's see the Arab and Persian, knowledge about India. As you know, they had a far deeper connection with India. So the father of Islamic, cartography is Ibn Qordadbeh. And, their books on routes and kingdoms, this is the translation, the Book of Countries, is around 850 CE. Il-Idrisi is very famous, and there is a map. In fact, we have a copy of Idrisi's, manuscript map, which is in Berlin, and we have a copy of reprint of that. Al-Biruni, of course, famously comes to India, the Kitab-e-Hind. He comes with Muhammad Ghazni and stays on for 10 years, learns Sanskrit, the scriptures, and when he goes back, his Kitab-e-Hind and the other book, Qanun Masudi on solar and lunar eclipses is based a lot on the knowledge he gained in India, which is the Sanskritic knowledge. So this flows back into the Arab world and then into Europe. Remember, this is this is 10th century. About 3 centuries later, we have Ibn Battuta, who comes and works in the courts. He comes from Morocco and comes to India, works in the courts of Tughlaq. And he's appointed a diplomat from India to China, right? So he travels and his records, and then he goes back, and he, of course, never likes to come back to the same place after he's left it behind, except he makes the exception for going to Mecca 4 times. Then Piri Reis is again an important cartographer, very, very popular in Europe, not so much in India. He does include a part of India in his famous world map. And he's the most famous Turkish map maker. China, of course, Faiyan, Yunsang, these are the popular names that we know from, and then Ising, right? So these descriptions are known to us and are very, very important in the Indian context, because Alexander Cunningham, who created the ASI of India, he basically learns the Chinese language, and before he comes to India, and uses the translations to rediscover the Buddhist sites in India, right? So the Mahajanpads is a long obsession for him, and he does a big contribution using those books. And then Zheng He, who's now, of course, there's a lot of interesting new information and mapping coming out from China, rediscovery because China was far ahead of Europe in terms of printing technologies. So there are a lot of woodcut Chinese records which have come out recently. Now, what about India? So India is not silent on I mean, we have a lot in terms of rivers description in the Rig Veda. There is lots of place references in the Vedas and the Upanishads, but they're not very specific. It's very difficult to use these. Some places the names themselves have changed. But Mahabharata and Ramayana, there's a huge reference to places, and there's a mix of imagined and real places, right? But there is a great deal of information in the classics. And the Puranas, the Bhagavad Puran is something which is really coming out as something very important. The Canto 4 and 5 in the 10th chapter, the Sri Krishna chapter, that is being used. We'll show you some bit of it, but that's basically the latest inputs are coming from there. And it's unraveling this, the Jambudvipa and the famous ancient cartography of India. Then we have several books where, India as described in Kalidasa, Indian places described in Panini. So we have people, famous Sanskrit and Pali scholars like V.S. Agrawala, who have left behind these beautiful pieces of research. India in the time of Patanjali, India in the time of, as described by Ashwagosha. So we have a lot of these books which are useful guides for us. The Buddhist Pali documents have great descriptions on the Mahajanpadas. And the Jain documents have great amount of detail on the cosmology side. Slight deviation from what we call the Buddhist point of view and the Hindu point of view, but largely the same, right? And then you have Kalhana's Rajtarangini, which is Kashmir and also Himalaya descriptions. So now over to Sangeeta. Here we're looking at Ptolemy's map now. Right.
So India, as with the progression of the age of exploration and the age of discovery, India became one of the largest surveyed areas outside of Europe. So there are a host of maps by European cartographers, and we are bringing to you some of them from our collection, which are landmark maps. So the first one is actually Ptolemy's Table 10 from his Geographia, which is recreated by Sebastian Münster, the German cartographer. So he issued his landmark Cartographia in the year 1544 with a great amount of detail about the known and unknown world. He mapped Ptolemy's Table 10, but he was famously ignorant of the subcontinent's peninsula, and so the proportion of the coast and the peninsula is highly inaccurate. And even if you see the proportion of Ceylon, which is called Taprovan or Taprovan, is also kind of a bit off in one of these earliest maps based on the description of Ptolemy's Table 10. Then moving on.
So there are three tables in Ptolemy's, table 10, 11, and 12. 9, 10, and 11. These are the three tables in which India appears. And he describes India as India inside Ganga and outside Ganga. And outside Ganga covers everything extra Gangeam all the way to farther India, which is all the way to entire Southeast Asia, below China.
So India intra-Gangeam, it represents the current geography of India, and India extra-Gangeam is all of Southeast Asia. So it was a simple classification, the most important characteristic of early maps, which continues even in the later day maps, as we'll see. Then, as a deviation from maps based on travelogues or descriptions, written accounts, we have theological maps. So one of the prime examples is by the German Protestant pastor Heinrich Bunting, who during the period 1545 and 1606 issued several versions of the world maps. And in one of them, Asia is represented as the Pegasus or the winged horse. And India, again characterized by India intra-Gangeam and extra-Gangeam, is at the rear of the horse, and Persia is in the center. And again, we can relate it to the fact that the fabled unicorn or the one-horned horse was also believed to be residing a legend of India. So that could be a correlation. And here are some other maps by Heinrich Bunting. So one of them, the first one on the left, is the TO map, Orbis Terrarium, in which basically this is a classic medieval era map in which the world is a circle surrounded by the ocean, and the world is classified into three continents, the three known parts of the world, Asia, Europe, and Africa, divided by the T shape of three rivers. Then on the right is again a map by Bunting in the form of a clover leaf with Jerusalem in the center of the world. And again, the three parts of the leaf are Europe, Asia, and Africa. Then a crowned maiden on the left, and another map again with the three parts, Europe, Africa, and Asia, with a more representation of the shape.
So the world map here, which he forms, which is the clover leaf map, is based on the TO map. Right. And if you see below in the TO map, it says below Asia, Sem, and below Africa, Cham and Yasafet. So you can see the biblical reference here, because the Shem is basically the son of Noah. And that's why the Semites or the Semite people comes from there. Right. So this is that early biblical reference, and that reflects in the map. And clover, of course, creates a different, with the clover leaf, Bunting, of course, creates a different, extends that a little forward, yeah. So, but you can clearly see the theological connect in Bunting's work and the mapping of this period in Europe too.
Then, if we look at, say, the theological maps in Asia, so, we can look at the cave temples of Dambola, Sri Lanka, dating back to the 1st century. So in these cave temples, we found, a painted map on the walls, which actually illustrates Mount Kailash, Mansarovar. You can see it in the form of a yantra here, and 5 rivers emanating out of the Mansarovar lake, with in fact a river feeding into the Mansarovar lake as well. So theologically, this is a representation of the world in this ancient Buddhist cave temple. Then if we look at the Jain world in theological maps, we have this modern temple structure in Hastinapur, which is actually representing the cosmos through architecture. So the world is depicted as this lotus in this structure, and this tower on the left actually, and the map in between, they have their description of the cosmos is that it is comprising of 13 islands and with different levels, and which are classified between heaven and hell. So the map in the center represents the 13 islands, the 13 levels, and the structure on the left is a recreation of heaven and hell. And you can take a lift up from hell to heaven to go up. Wish it could be that easy. So that's in Hastinapur, the physical representation of the world map. Yeah. Modern day representation. Then if we look at the Hindu world, in the Bhagavad Puran, in the 10th chapter, the 5th and 6th canto, they describe the concept of the cosmos or the universe, Jambudvipa and the various lokas above and below it, the various levels. Now, a lot of good work is happening by ISKCON Bombay. They've come out with this book, which is, looking at the Bhagavad cosmology once again from the Bhagavad Puran, and a lot of videos on YouTube. So basically, it's a very mathematical, scientific, it's backed by maths and science, the explanations of the cosmos and universe.
The new models actually relate to the mathematical calculation of time. For instance, when we say Bharat Varsha, so Varsh is also year, right? I mean, the way we generally use it today. So there are 7 Varshas, as you can see over here, right? So there is, this aspect has been much ignored. Actually, this aspect where you can't really put this whole concept of the different dvipas and the different lokas. This is great work. This book can be bought off Amazon. It's barely about a year old, and they're making these models. There's a great amount. There's several scientists involved in it too. So a great method, but we're watching this pretty closely because it's for the first time there's direct connection between the mathematical geometry and this abstract concept of Mount Meru, Jambudvipa.
And astronomy.
So the astronomy and astrology connection is a direct one here. And this is coming out in English language. So good for us to understand. All right.
Then again, if we come back to say antiquarian maps, so the oldest printed antiquarian map that is on old paper representing ancient India is by the French cartographer d'Anville, who created this map in 1765, and it represents in a fair amount of detail the great kingdoms of the past, or the Mahajanpads. Panchal kingdom with its capital Ahikshetra, which is also featured in the right. In the right, in contrast, we have a map featured in the works of the geographer, French geographer again, Elisée Reclus. So in his book, he has this map of ancient India in which the Mahajanpads again, with Panchala kingdom in the center, and the other Janpads are spreading over the geography of India in the shape of a lotus. And this map is actually based on the works of the Indian astronomer, Varaha Mihira, who lived in Ujjain in the 6th century.
Now, this is we are deliberately pointing out a couple of things here. We will come back to these two very important cartographers in the context of India, both d'Anville and Reclus, both French-speaking, both French actually. In d'Anville's map, he actually takes that information from Ptolemy. And, one of in Ptolemy's table 9, 10, and 11, the word which comes out largest is Adishatra or Ahichatra. It's written twice. And he doesn't, Panchal's kingdom in Mahabharata is, Panchala is basically appears in one of the 16 Mahajanpads, and it is also in the Mahabharata, the capital of the Pandavas. Right. So Panchal gets a lot of prominence, and Ahichatra or Adishatra gets a lot of prominence in European cartography in 1st century AD, and then it continues to flow through. India, in the meantime, largely Ahichatra is forgotten, right? To a lot of you, Ahichatra may not be that relevant, and perhaps none of you have been there. We will touch this point again later, because in cartography, Ahichatra's prominence as a Mahajanpad, the largest of the Mahajanpads, and also as the capital of the Pandavas, is very, very dominant. Does that place exist? And we will park this question and answer it later. Yeah. So these are two antiquarian maps
representing ancient India and the
India
Janpads
from the European standpoint. But remember, all the information is flowing from India, right?
Then the shape of the Indian peninsula emerges a little more, but the characteristic feature is still defined by India either within the Ganges or India extra Ganges or India outside of the Ganges, the Southeast Asian region. So this map, where the first clearer picture of the Indian peninsula emerges, is by another German cartographer, Martin Waldseemüller, who actually also named America. He was exchanging a lot of letters with the Italian traveler Amerigo Vespucci, who traveled to the newly discovered New World. And as they were exchanging letters, then Waldseemüller, meanwhile, was publishing 20 modern maps And he renamed, as a tribute to Vespucci, he renamed the New World America. That's how America was Christian.
So so this is an important, Waldseemüller and his map. A couple of pieces are still around. They're printed maps. So one of the copies is with the Smithsonian in Washington. So from the same atlas, there is one copy, one page with us, and this beautiful, not a very large size map, has even in the Indian context has some great amount of relevance because of the shape emerging here properly, well, not properly, but still better than what it was in the Ptolemy's maps.
And
right?
Here, the printing is by the famous German painter and etcher or printer Albrecht Dürer. So again, this becomes a special, rare, prized piece.
So this wood engraving is done by Dürer. So so Dürer's hand is here, and also because of this piece on how Waldseemüller names America. Remember that, like Waldseemüller or most of the cartographers themselves were not travelers. Very, very few are. It's basically they gather knowledge and they keep plotting on the basis of the information which flows to them. So Amerigo Vespucci is a banker who looks like who travels on the early ships, sends very spicy letters of what he sees in the Americas. And while as you keep writing in Latin, New World and various, because the maps were always like Sanskrit is used in India, Latin was the language in Europe in the early printing, so it's always Latin. So one day he writes America, CA as in ka means land in Latin. So Amerigo's land. And it was supposed to be funny, but the name stuck, and that's why we have America as America. So America is named by Martin Waldseemüller.
Then let's look at another map which looks upside down to us, but this is the point of view of the Italian, a group of Venetians. So Ramusio published this map in his travel collection of travels and voyages called Del Navigazioni Viaggi, and this includes this famous upside down map, which is actually by another Venetian cartographer called Gastaldi. And it certainly, actually, it may appear upside down to us, but it's not too inaccurate, because as the Europeans would sail to India, they would reach the southern tip first, and this is what they would see. This is what they would see of India to begin with. And of course, Marco Polo, another Venetian, Marco Polo's voyages to India, that description rules. So you can see in the seas off the coast of India, tremendous or fascinating sea creatures and monsters. So this is another landmark map. And then we come to Mercator, the famous, famous for his Mercator projections on cylindrical maps. So that led to the first stage of accuracy, especially for navigational charts, and in providing a way to make, the idea that the world is flat. So the Mercator family of Netherlands, in fact, we move away from Germans to the Dutch now. They were the first family of cartographers for 3 generations. And again, Mercator bases his maps on Ptolemy's Table 11, which shows the geographical description of India. And again, India intra-Ganjam and outside Ganjam is there. So everything on the east of Persia and south of China is India. And everything outside of the Ganges, Southeast Asia, is represented in Mercator's map.
So these are again, table 9, 10, and 11 of Ptolemy. So there's a continuity here. We have all 3 tables with us.
Yeah, and this is one of the early colored maps as well. And another thing here is that we have a distinction between East and West Indies. After the discovery of America, we have a clear-cut demarcation of East and West Indies in Mercator maps. Then the next map of Mercator is India Orientalis, which shows further details of the Southeast Asian region. But again, here there is an error which continues till several hundred years later as well. This is of the description of a river called Chiaime.
A lake.
A lake called Chiaime, which is probably emanating from the Himalayas. So you can see the description of the representation of the lake here. in the central part, just on the right where it's written India Extra Ganges, it corresponds to the modern day border between India and Tibet. So this is actually a mythical lake, which a lot of explorers, Himalayan travelers like Sven Heding also tried to understand this more, but then they realized it was an error. Maybe it was, since it was based on mythical accounts of the Mansarovar Lake, this depiction happened. So here in Mercator's map, there is a further accuracy in the shape of India. However, this error, it continues. And it possibly, there's some correlation with modern Chiang Mai in Thailand, also in Southeast Asia. So
the source of the error is not from Hondius Mercator. It flows from another map. We are going to just show you that bit. The name Chiang Mai may have stuck here, but the concept of 5 rivers flowing out, if you relate back to that Buddhist concept, the Mansarovar and the 5 rivers flowing out. So clearly there is some information from the cosmological map. And then because of the importance of Ganga in India, which everyone had heard of by the year 1500, this error is famously made. And this sticks for the next 200 odd years. Yeah. So you'll see, let's show you the genesis of this.
And the river, in fact, is feeding into Irrawaddy and the other rivers of Southeast Asia. So,
Hondius is the most famous cartographer of his time. Yeah. So this family and these are the most important atlases, very collectible, the Atlas Major and Minor, right? So
then the first the first geographer to put together the world's knowledge, to aggregate it all in an atlas. And again, the atlas word is derived from the Greek figure who's holding all the knowledge of the world, the burden of the world. So that's how the word atlas comes in.
It's literally coined by Ortelius.
Yeah, coined by Ortelius.
So the world's first atlas, and the word as we use it today is thanks to Abraham Ortelius.
And he calls his first atlas the Theatre of the World in 1570. And it has he wasn't a cartographer, but he was the first to aggregate all the mapping and exploration knowledge of his time and include it in the comprehensive map book. And it was very accurate because the description of Asia, as in this map, Asia Nova Descriptio, is highly accurate, which was used for hundreds of years later and even till today, in fact.
Well, we have only this one page from his atlas. We would love to purchase the atlas. It does come up for sale. So if any of you are interested, around 100,000 euros is what it costs to purchase the first atlas of the world. To the best of my knowledge, there is no piece in India, in no library. We've never come across it here. So it comes up every year or two for sale, but surprisingly, not a copy in India known.
Then we come to Mughal India and the demarcation into states or subas. So the first account or description of this is in Abu Fazl's Ain-e-Akbari, or the third book of Akbarnama, written around 1590. So this section of Akbarnama, the life and times of King Akbar, it has details of the statistics on population size and boundaries of the various states and subas administered by the Mughals. So now no map exists in the original Persian manuscript, but after around 200 years after that, in the late 18th century, the Englishman Robert Wilkins, he issued a map which describes the Mughal subas, which we have a copy of, which we're showing you here.
There is also a beautiful Suba handmade atlas, which is right now in France, and that's it's been reprinted and it's available for sale here. It's called Mughal Maps, which has beautiful Suba by Suba maps, hand painted with great amount of detail, and that's been released by a shop in Delhi. And Susan Gole compiled it and got the rights to reprint it. We'll mention it a little later.
Right. Then we have, now we come to East India maps, as we progress towards the later Mughal period, East India maps. So the first diplomat or ambassador of the East India Company to stay in the courts of Jahangir was the famous Thomas Roe. And he paved the way with his diplomacy for the British East India Company's entry to Surat. And he also, on his way back, he met a fellow shipmate, William Baffin, the surveyor and explorer. And together they came out with the first detailed map of northern India, which was published by the East India Company.
I mean, just to highlight, he actually accompanied Jahangir on elephants from Agra to Lahore. And he kept taking down notes and with his own scale of measurement. So Sir Thomas Roe is actually directly responsible for the first East India Company map. His notes is what he shared with William Baffin and that's why it's the Baffin-Roe map, which is made on the ship back to England, which becomes the first. So the handmade copy of the manuscript map is no longer known where it is, or it's been destroyed. The first time it comes in print is in Samuel Purkas's travel book. We have a copy of that. So that is literally, it's a very scarce, very few copies exist. We have a copy of that Samuel Purkas a print of the Baffin-Roe map. But then what we're showing here is larger, a lot more beautiful, because this is by the great Blau. So Cornelius Blau, one of the most famous cartographers of Europe. And this is his magnificent Mughals map. The errors here are quite stark based on the Baffin-Roe one. You can see the Chame Lake error right here. And because this is the source of the problem is Baffin and Roe. And the Himalayas are pushed too far behind. Why is that? Is basically because Thomas Roe sort of assumed that he'll see the Himalayas as he approaches Lahore, and he does not. So the Himalayas get pushed in European cartography too far behind for many years. So these two famous errors are what we're highlighting. There is a lot more, very interesting. As you can see, all the detail is on the journey that they took from Agra to Lahore. All the city, all the places are named here, right? And there's a lot of territory which is not known, the Himalayas. And at that time, the Uttar Pradesh, Bihar territory is not known to the Europeans. Madhya Pradesh is not known for a very long time.
Then working on building up on the Baffin-Roe map, another French cartographer, German cartographer, Suter, who was trained also under Homan. He made one of the most beautiful city plans and maps of his time. And his work on the Mughal Subas continues. It's quite beautiful. However, there is again a cartographic error here, because he talks of a Suba or a state called Jengapur, which actually doesn't exist.
Was it Jaipur? We don't know, but it comes physically close to where Jaipur is. But Jengapur again becomes an error, because this is again done by a famous cartographer. And this map and this description, which is the political side of it. So Jengapur lasts for another 150 years, 200 years after this. Jengapur comes in European maps. It's a very fascinating piece, which finally Sven Hedin actually goes down he tries to find the place and does not. So this is still an anomaly as to how this error came in. Jaipur wasn't there as a city at the time that Suter made this map. Certainly not with Jai Singh's naming of the city. So we're not really sure, but maybe something like that, some information flow.
Yeah, and the error, the Chiang Mai error also continues in this map. Then we come to a very accurate description of the path of the river Ganga. So this map by Tiefenhaler and Anquetil du Perron, who also was one of the first French Indologists who translated the Zend Avesta from French. So based on from Persian to French. So based on information from Indian sources, they plotted a very accurate map of the flow of the river Ganga, which was also in a recent research by P.L. Madan. He explores this further in his book, River Ganga.
It's a very fascinating map. You can see Mansarovar, and you can see this based on Indian sources and Indian descriptions. There are many handmade maps which seem to have been aggregated by Duperron. Duperron, of course, is a linguist. I mean, he knows Sanskrit, he knows Persian, very fast. So based on that information, the German cartographer Tiefenhaler makes this map. It's part of a series of four books in German. We have these books, very, very fascinating, still not translated entirely to English till date. So this 1784 map is a landmark map, because from the European standpoint, this nails the Gaumuk. Remember that in the Gaumuk is shown as the cows, the lake's shape in Blau's map is basically the face of a cow. So they really think that the Ganga comes out from a lake where the shape of the lake is Gaumuk, right? So that stuff gets fixed here.
Then moving away from maps, let's look at some city views. So the famous collection of Hogenberg, Braun and Hogenberg, who created this compilation called Cities of the World, is the world's first atlas which represents pictorial views of world cities, published in printed in 1572. It has 363 engravings in 6 volumes, and it's based on early Portuguese inputs. So there are views of Indian cities like Calicut, Goa, Diu, Cannanore. And 20 years later, Lincolnstein also traveled to Goa and created a more detailed city plan. However, it was Braun and Hogenberg's work which shows the first view of Indian cities in print form.
So you can see Goa is here. This is prior to that famous map by Lincolnstein called Sedare di Goa, right? So this information was already there. There's Diu. And it's fairly, I mean, there's a great deal of accuracy here. So the flow of information, so there are 4 Indian cities out of 300 plus cities in pictorially shown in Braun and Hogenberg. It's very nice. We have colored editions also of the same atlas, which are hand colored, later day, of course, and the original prints.
Then we come to the great geographer and Indologist Dutch Philip Balduus, who lived in Ceylon and in southern India. He learned Tamil, and he learned a lot about our religion, the culture and customs. So in his illustrated book published in 1676, which is titled A True and Exact Description of the Most Celebrated East India Coasts of Malabar and Coromandel, he has city views of Surat, Kochi, the port cities, since he's focusing on the coasts of Malabar and Coromandel. And there are beautiful cartouches, there are precise fort maps, there are language and script maps of Tamil, there are European history illustrations of Vasco and Portuguese work done earlier, then flora and fauna accounts. So they're beautiful. There is Bombay, and so the city views of Bombay, coastal maps, the famous coastal maps of Coromandel and Malabar coast, and beautiful cartouches. So he's one of the geographers who lived in the southern parts of South Asia for a long time, and his description is highly accurate. So
we have this, for many years we kept buying each of these pages. Finally, we actually purchased the entire book. So we have the first edition, the Dutch edition entirely, with all its